And one of the things I think we have to get into in this election season is an understanding as we have this continued conversation on the way that we've allowed certain terms to be verbally gentrified. As we have coined it, they verbally gentrified Black Lives Matter and turned it into BLM. They verbally gentrified diversity, equity, and inclusion, and now they call it DEI, or as Elon Musk says, DIE. They verbally gentrified critical race theory, turned it into Marxism, CRT. And now they verbally gentrified Dr. King, changing his legacy into something that he would never have believed in. But I think that if you look at the techniques and strategies that were actually used during that period of time, Dr. King reached out to both sides of the aisle. In 1960, for example, initially he was a supporter of Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon, who was the vice president under Eisenhower, who oversaw the integration of schools, who appointed the Warren Court that decided Brown versus the Board of Education. At the same time, the Democrats at that time were the Democrats of LBJ. A Texas Dixiecrat, of Strom Thurmond, of Jesse Helms, the Southern segregationist, Axe Handle Maddox, George Wallace. That was the Democratic Party at the time. And so for Dr. King to switch and support Kennedy in 1960 based upon the promises that there would be a strong civil rights act was a turning point in Black American politics. It was a process that had been going on since the mid 1930s. A lot of Black people supported progressive Democrats like FDR, but they didn't so much support former Klansman Harry Truman. But it's important for us to understand that we have to work on both sides of the aisle. Take the good from one party, you can take the Kennedy out, but leave the bad. That being the Strom Thurmonds and the Jesse Helms and the Dixiecrats. You can take the good, the Eisenhowers, out of a party. You can leave the bad, the Nixons, in a party. So it's important for us to work in a multi-partisan fashion if we want to get our agenda passed. That's part of the lesson that happens when you learn about Martin Luther King as opposed to this caricature MLK that has been created. Joining us now from the other side of the aisle, one of our conservative friends, Ms. Ronda Kennedy. So Ronda, throughout the show, we've been talking about kind of the conservative attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Can you kind of explain why this is suddenly an issue for conservatives where diversity, equity, and inclusion is a bad thing?
Well, I think because some people in the Democrat Party, which I like to call them the Democrat establishment, has demonized those words and turned them into something else that's beneficial for them and their career politics, because they're all career politicians. They're not about real solutions. They're about just doing that dog whistle to get people to vote for them during the election cycle. So I think that's what it's turned into is that those words have been demonized by the Democrat establishment.
Well, I can agree with you that I will say the Democrats do talk a bigger game than they deliver on. So they'll talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but then when you ask who's running the campaigns for these major Democratic candidates, is very rarely diverse, equal, or inclusive. If you look at the heads of many of these big political action committees that are getting paid 6 and 7 figures, there's very rarely diverse, equitable, or inclusive. So they talk a better game than they deliver on. But when you talk about the demonization, Ron DeSantis started saying it's not DEI, it's DIE, because you die when you put in these types of programs. The war on woke was a war on the diversity programs. You have these conservative justices overturning the affirmative action programs at Harvard University and at North Carolina. Why can't Black conservatives just kind of say, like, look, this isn't effective. This is hurting us as a party. You are only pushing away Black people by pushing this initiatives. This isn't conservatism. I'm a conservative because I'm low taxes. I'm low federal government involvement. I'm pro-life. I'm pro-family. But I'm not going to be part of a party that is promoting this idea that giving Black people an opportunity is a bad thing. Why can't y'all just kind of flex that muscle on them?
Well, first of all, don't say y'all because it's not me. because I say that every
I will
single
say that.
day.
I will say that.
No, no,
Rhonda, don't
no, no.
play.
I say that. I say that every single day. I'm about equal opportunity. I'm not about a handout. I'm not about a welfare check. I'm not about a Section 8 voucher. I'm about real business ownership and real home ownership in the community. And as far as the Republican Party goes, that's my party. I've been a Republican my entire life. Both sides of my family, my great grandfathers on both sides of my family, ran away from their literal Democrat plantation, joined the Union Army, and fought for our freedom and for this country. So I'm about equal opportunity, and I'm also about the Republican Party, because that party was, you know why that party was created, and you know who that party was created for. So I'm not going to abandon my party because there's a few bad apples in it. I'm going to stay in my party and build it and make sure that there's a voice on both sides of the aisle, a real voice on both sides of the aisle for the furtherance of the community. And I don't mean like Democrats do. They want handouts. For an example, the COVID money. Okay, so COVID money for businesses who they were forced to shut down. My hairstylist, who's a self-employed, has a beauty shop, does very well for herself. Her business was destroyed during COVID, and her credit score was destroyed during COVID. But nobody thought in Congress to not make this credit score based, because people were paying their bills with their credit cards because they weren't working, and then their credit score dropped. They were being denied money for their business for COVID based on their credit score. Why didn't the Democrats, or anyone in that matter in Congress, think about that? The everyday working people, particularly those that are in the minority communities, that they would be affected by COVID and not be able to get the business money like Walmart did and every other big box corporation did.
I think you're right, and I think part of the issue is that we approach these things from a partisan point of view. We Everything in our our politics is left versus right, Democrat versus conservative, MAGA versus Marxist, wherever it will be. And what gets forgotten are regular everyday people, many of which have very similar problems. So I talk all the time, I grew up in a trailer park in Waverly Hall, Georgia. So the poor black folks, the poor white folks, and the poor Mexicans were all the same. We all went to the same schools. We all went to the same one grocery store. We all did the same stuff. But none of them could get along because they've been convinced by the ruling classes that the reason that each one of them is poor is because of each other, not because of the elites at the top who are setting banking policy, who are setting the price of groceries and the price of gas, who are controlling everything. They can convince us to hate each other based on nothing, as opposed to, and that keeps us from uniting against them. Can you stick with us for one more break, Rhonda?
I think that I think that yes, they've created this dividing class amongst us with brown versus black versus brown, and that. But at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat. If this boat sinks, we all sinking. It's not that you guys are gonna get out of the boat and get a life. That's no, we're all gonna sink. So and growing up in the South, growing up in the South, I grew up in the Midwest. We were the only black family in the entire town. So I was the only black kid in school. But my grandparents who raised me had the first black flower shop in Milwaukee. So I went to Milwaukee every weekend and during the summer. So I was able to still be diverse. And just looking at the education between the education I got in Kewaskum, Wisconsin versus the education that was going on in Milwaukee they were miles apart. Mm-hmm. And we have to look at today, LAUSD, which is the LA County School District, they're graduating students at a fifth grade reading level. How are they supposed to compete in a world where their reading level is only at fifth grade? And you're absolutely right. It's not about a party. It is about America. And everyone needs to work together so that we all can live that American dream and achieve that American dream, as Martin Luther King saw. And, I always equate it to this isn't the Bloods and the Crips, and we all need to get along. And the American people are just caught in a drive-by between the war between the two aisles. And you have to cross over and work together for the furtherance of all Americans.
All right, we have to hit a quick break. We're going to come back with Rhonda Kennedy. Listen to News and Talk 1380 WAOK.